Welcome to Fairy Tale Access, where the head fairy's quest is to prove that fairy tales do exist in actual time rather than once upon a time. Together, we will unravel the heroes, young and old, who turn dreams into reality. These are the people who still believe in happily ever after. The discoveries will bend even our most cynical non-believers into believing in fairy tales. Hi, welcome to Fairy Tale Access. Today we have Arthur E.G. Creel with the Immortal. So, you know, when you're turning that certain age and you book that wicked exciting vacation because you're going to lose your vacation days at the end of the year, this is definitely the book that make you think twice about it. Thank you for joining us. How are you?
Thank you so much. I can't tell you how nice it is to talk to another adult about books. This has just been the highlight of my year, I think. Yeah.
You're so funny. How many children do you have?
I have two small ones and one adult. And it's not, I guess it's not that bad. They're boys. My youngest, he's 2 and he just learned how to do front flips off the couch last night. So keeps things exciting.
Wow. All right. So you have this really elaborate vacation that Stacy's going to take to this wonderful island. And I love how you start out the book. So I love the bookmarks, by the way. They were so cute.
Thank you.
But I'm just going to give away the first sentence. Is that okay?
You can give away as much as you want.
Okay. We're not going to give away a lot, but it starts out with, was that blood on the door or was it just my imagination? I didn't get a good look as I rushed down the hallway. All right, then I'm like, so what's going on? You know, and it just starts off so well. And then it just flows through this just crazy way of becoming immortal. So it's not vampires, has a bunch of Vikings in it. It's a wicked twist. How did you come up with it?
Apparently, I ate some mustard or something before going to bed because I had a terrible nightmare. And I was in the scenario where there was a mass murder happening. And to hide, I went into a library. And I realized all the books were the same story written over and over again in different languages. And there was a man sitting in a corner and he wasn't afraid. And I realized that he was the bad guy. And to stall, I just took one of the books and began to read it. And it was in Portuguese. And he knew I couldn't read Portuguese, but he was just like, oh, yeah, go ahead, you know. Let me know what you think of the book. And that's how the whole thing started. I couldn't stop thinking about it when I was awake. And it took on my daydreams. And I started talking about it with my husband. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to write a paragraph, get it out of my head. And 6 weeks later, I had a first draft.
Wow. Is this your first book or have you written others?
I've never written anything before. Not a short story, nothing. I'm not a writer. I'm dyslexic. And I thought that would be above my skill sets. Never in a million years, might as well have run for president or become an astronaut before even thinking of writing a short novel.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. So how would the dyslexia, explain the condition so that people understand it and could see how hard it might be to write a story in the first place?
When I read out loud, for instance, it's really hard for me to read what's on the page. I'll make up words that aren't there, or I'll read things in different orders. When I write, I will often do the IEs backwards, the Gs, Bs, Ds, they're all reversed. And when I do math or numbers, I'll come up with the answer, but write it backwards. I didn't actually start reading until I was in 5th grade. And my first book, my 5th grade teacher made me read The Hobbit. That was my introduction to fantasy. And I looked up after writing the book because I thought, oh, who else might have been dyslexic? And famously, Agatha Christie was also dyslexic.
Wow. Well, she got the hang of it. So we expect to see more from you because this was wicked good. It was so incredibly satisfying. I just loved it. I read it all in like one sitting.
It's a short book, so you can read it in one sitting.
Right.
It's
It's
easy
less,
to take
it's just a
2 hours.
little over, it's less than 150 pages, but it's so full and there's so much going on. And it was just great. It was horrifying at parts, but it was great. And I just love vengeance. It was so good.
It's an itch in all of us that we need to scratch. There's always this fine line of good and evil, but when it comes down to it, we can justify our actions for anything we do and make a really horrific act make sense to us because we don't want to be the bad guys, because nobody's the bad guy, but we all are.
And what about Stacy? Where did she come from?
Well, Emma is the main character. Stacy is actually a male character later on in the story. And do you want to know about Stacy the gay Viking, or do you want to know about Emma the protagonist?
Both.
Okay, so Emma the protagonist is 40. I'm 39. I wonder if that's a coincidence. This might be a midlife crisis. I enjoy it. Nobody told me midlife crisis could be fun. She's overworked and underappreciated. Again, maybe something that a lot of women can relate to. And especially American women that work full time, we work on our off days. And this was her saying, I'm going to take control. It's going to be my choice. And she does. And it just so happens that her vacation ends her up on an island with an immortal Viking that wants to put her on the dinner menu. But she has wit and she has luck, and she manages to, or does she manage to survive? I guess you'll have to read the book. But you did read the book, so you know what happens to Emma.
I know what happens, but we don't want anybody else to know what happens yet because it's such a good read. I mean, you started it off perfectly. We're right in the middle of what's going to become some huge action. She is quick on her feet. I love the way she tries to get out of a couple of situations and just being horrified at the whole thing. And then some of the Vikings she's met along the way and where it ends up. Perfect.
And it's a good standalone. And it does start with a punch in the face. But if it didn't, would you really have read it? Especially if you knew I was a first-time author. I don't think anyone would turn to page 2 if page 1 didn't just smack you around a little bit and make you wonder what the heck is going on. And as a standalone book, it's good, but it's like a tree with branches and roots. There's pasts, there's histories that can be explored. And there's so many characters and different aspects and futures and that could absolutely grow and bloom and maybe even cross over.
So do you think you'll be writing more?
I told myself after the editing process that I was never doing this again. The editing was really bad. I had so much fun writing it. And then when it came down to editing, I couldn't even find an editor. And that's when all of my insecurities came back. And I thought, who do I think I am writing a novel thinking that I'm capable of doing this? But there was a women's group, an author's women's group. And I found somebody who said, I can edit this for you. And it's not that bad. I've seen worse. And, that kind of made me put my chin up a little bit and decided, okay, I'm this far. Let's finish this. Let's get to the finish line. And then it was done. And I told my husband no more. And he kind of looked at me and said, yeah, right. And then not even a week later, I started writing Lily, which is an episodic on Kindle Vella about a little girl who's born with a shadow. But you might think, what's the big deal? Everybody has a shadow, but not like Lily's.
Ooh. I bet it's just as intriguing as the Immortal.
I need some more violence in it, and then it'll be it'll be on par.
Yes, there's a lot of violence in here. I was like, but I was just so, it was such a good read. It was so satisfying, especially because of the vengeance aspect. Vengeance, it can be a good thing.
It can be a good thing. But then again, are we justifying our evil deeds because we do it or because we feel good about what happened? Is it really the right choice? And
Yeah.
it's about not what society deems what's right for us, maybe, but something within us that is fun to explore without going overboard or making it too terrifying, not having to lock the book in a cupboard, being afraid of it or anything. It was enjoyable. It's entertaining. And that you use the word satisfying makes me so happy. Thank you. That is the word.
Spoiler alert, on the back of the book says, don't fall in love because the ending will rip your heart out. It was like, oh, so I'm really going to like somebody who's going to die, which made me want to read it more. And then at the end, I was just like, and then it went back to that quote and I was like, I get it. Really good
You get
play
it.
on words.
Thank you.
Key. So what's next?
Oh, I think I need to eat more weird food before going to sleep so that I can have more horrific nightmares so I can write them down.
That was just really different.
Thank
Really,
you.
it
And
just,
maybe it helps too that I'm not much of a reader and I don't know what the rules are. And I listened to Neil Gaiman's masterclass, and I remember him saying there are no rules. And that just opened me up to, you know what? He's right. I'm just going to make a story and I'm going to give myself one rule. And the only rule I gave myself was don't be boring.
well, you definitely didn't break that rule. So tell me about Stacy.
Okay. Stacy is kind of a very small character with a big role. And he's a favorite with a lot of people, even though he's only in a couple of the chapters. And maybe it's another spoiler alert, but I want people to know that he's not dead. It's important for me to say that. And if you want to know what happened to him, I think I'm going to write a bonus chapter and include that eventually as well. Because his story needs to go on further. There needs to be more told about Stacy.
What did you base him on?
He's based after a real character. Many of them are. They're real Vikings in history, people that did exist. And historically, there's a lot of history bombs in there that if you're a history buff, you might get kind of excited about. But if you're not, it doesn't matter. They're just little Easter eggs for you to find if you find them. If you don't, it's not necessary for the story to go on. But I think it adds another layer of, oh, that could have happened. Because the Vikings, they are very well-known Vikings in history, and they have been called immortal before. And they have a lot of superstition about their lives and their deaths. And what if they really are immortal? Who would they have been in history? Who could they have possibly been? What wars did they fight in? Were they allies? Were they enemies? Did they fight amongst themselves? So many questions. And so I looked into history and I compared photos and art. And I thought, some people have stories that are very similar. And what if they were the same person?
I thought that was really well laid out. I like the history part. How did you do your research? Is that something that you've always been interested in?
Oh, I'm so lucky that we have Google and YouTube. I mean, I looked up what weather conditions would be like in Antarctica, what it would be like. How do you cook on a ship when you're in an ocean with swells that are 50 feet tall? How long can you stay in the water before you freeze up in those conditions if you fall in the water? I mean, all of these things, all of these experiences, there's a near drowning experience. And I looked up, well, what does it feel like? What does it feel like when water goes into your lungs? And you can find all of this information from people that have shared it, or with a simple internet search. And it was amazing to be able to find all that at the tips of my hands, and then just continue writing the story to make it really feel as though it was happening.
I think you did it in such a compact, clear-cut way that you really brought us into those situations, because the drowning incident was like, oh, this is such a bad trip. Like, you know, like what
And you
could
wonder,
go
is
wrong
it a
for
truth?
this
Is it
poor
real?
girl?
Right.
You know, what's next? But Stacey was one of the characters I really liked. And of course, Emma, she's fresh. She really knows how to handle herself, or take chances to get out of situations. That was so cool. How she got away from him at one point. But just giving us enough information to maybe we're going to like this guy, and maybe we're just going to really hate him.
How many people in our lives do we really have like that? You know, when you read the romance stories and things, it's always this attractive billionaire who's kind of a, insert naughty word, and the woman is this perfect woman who needs rescuing. And that's not the narrative when you turn 40. That something shifts inside of us when we say, we're not waiting for somebody to come and rescue us anymore. This is our decision. This becomes my decision. This becomes my life. And so that's why the subtitle on their Life or Death, the choice is hers, is hopefully in a way empowering. I mean, it's an entertaining read, but I hope that a lot of people, men or women, that read this realize that you have arrived, that it's your choice.
I think it does, because it's one of those books that I'll keep for a really bad day and reread it.
Oh, thank you. I was going to ask you, what do you do with all your awesome books that you get? Do you keep them all?
I keep most of them, and then several of them, I have a lot of people that'll borrow them and leave additional reviews for authors. So I try to give a lot away too. But so many of them are so good that I just have to keep them. I'm going to need more bookshops. Yeah, and you can go back and read them, or you can cross-reference information and see ways that people did things differently.
I love that. I'm so glad you shared that with me, because I was really curious. I thought, what does someone do that? And how many books a year do you read?
So minimally, if everything went right and I didn't have to reject any, 48.
Wow.
But it's usually closer to, I would say probably at least maybe 60 to 75. But I can read it's like it's my inspiration to get on the treadmill, because I'll just bring them with me. I love books because you can carry them around more than you can always get like a Wi-Fi connection or something to read them. And yeah, I don't know. Probably about.
And you'll read and run at the same time. This is a perfect book for you then, because you got to get that adrenaline up.
Exactly. So I read, I run, I take them with me wherever I'm going, so I can just read through them really quick. I like the way a book feels in your hand. I like that you did it in hardback. Yeah. So I would say, sorry?
I'm sorry. I wanted it to feel like a journal.
Oh, it does feel like a journal.
Like a journal on Bjorn's shelf of the story that he wrote. All of his stories that he wrote, I wanted it to feel like it was Emma's first book.
That's great. No, but when you read a really good book, you want to share it with your friends. So It's one of those books that I would just send out to a few people, for birthdays or holidays. Just like, oh, or something goes wrong. This is a really good book, for those breakups when your friends break up or divorce. So,
Yes, I was just going to say, anyone who's a little man hating at the moment, that's your book. Take that, take a glass of wine, eat yourself,
definitely.
eat yourself some comfort food, and read The Immortal.
It was just so satisfying. All right, so what's next? You're also a photographer.
Yes.
Tell me about
I've been
that.
I've been a photographer. I started in high school and then I freelanced for a newspaper. And then I moved to Germany and I worked off and on as a photographer for the last 22 years. And currently I photograph my children every single day, or myself, whatever, just daily life. And that's a personal project, but I've been doing that for 2 years, every single day a photo. And I think that daily discipline actually helped in writing The Immortal, because if I give myself a goal and a project, I know I need to finish it and do it every day. And I gave myself a goal of writing every day, and I managed to do 1,000 words a day. And before you know it, boom, it was done.
That's wonderful. And you had great editors. I think there was only one word in here, but I think you
You
already
did.
fixed it.
You found a missing B, and I appreciate you so much. If you find any more, though, please let me know. So
There's absolutely there was nothing else. Because I always look for that in grammar or, missing structure where they might not put the whole story together, or something's missing where it just doesn't work. But that's why I was so impressed, because I really look for every little thing that could be wrong, because there's so many new authors and you really want to try to pick the best ones to share with your friends. And it was just, I really loved it. I'm so impressed.
This is why I feel so lucky. I can't believe that you're giving me the time of day. I've written so many people, and I think the first line is, "Hi, I'm a debut author," and it's just automatically no.
Maybe don't tell them that you're new.
Maybe I should lie a little, right?
Or just tell them, I would just give them the back of the book. Emma just turned 40. She's finally decided to begin living her best life. She books a vacation at a resort on a French Polynesian island. Like, who doesn't want to do that, number one? Only to find herself on the dinner menu of an immortal Viking. And who doesn't like Vikings? Like, typically those guys are hot. If she keeps her wits and with a little luck, maybe she'll make it off the island alive. I was hooked. I'm like, I have to find out what happened to this girl.
Thank you. Yeah, I wrote myself in a cameo scene if any movie producers ever want to buy it.
Oh, good. I think it
Because
would
the
make a
goal,
great story. Like, I think it would make a great movie.
thank you. Please pass that on to your people. I think it would make a great movie too.
No, it's just so enjoyable. It's completely different than most of the Immortal books you're going to see coming out. He took a very different twist, chancy, and it made sense. It all worked together. The dragon that's incorporated in, it was really well done.
It made a lot of sense, and it kind of got into my head because I started for a minute believing what I was writing. Then I had to pull back from it and be like, okay, obviously there's not. Or is there? Are there mortals among us?
Well, I think that's great, because I actually started to believe it. It was so realistic. The, attempted escape, the townspeople, the people coming in afterwards, how everything played out. It was so realistic, which is probably why I read it in one sitting.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, and it goes past maybe a few things too. My Emma isn't always clean and pristine. She gets bug bites. She has hairy legs. There's talk about hygiene and things that I don't know, seem to be overlooked sometimes in fantasy writing.
No, it was very realistic. I just couldn't put it down. All right, so you have one more possibly coming out. You're doing a chapter. And what did you think of the way that other women have responded to it? Were you surprised? And why are you
I was
surprised?
surprised. Yes, I was surprised about how positive it was. I'm waiting for the shoe to drop and somebody to say 1 star, this is just baloney. And knock on wood, it hasn't happened yet. And if anybody does, that's fine. I appreciate you. Thanks for the star anyway. And the word that keeps being repeated is satisfying. It's one word that I hear from almost everyone who talks to me about the book that's read it. And I mean, there haven't been very many. It's pretty much just been my own circle of people and a few other authors that I've reached out to and offered, advanced copies to see if they would read it. But I am very fortunate that they felt the same way I did about the book, that it was entertaining and satisfying. It's not life-changing, but it's a good read and it's fun.
It isn't life-changing, but it is entertaining. It's more than satisfying. It's that really good, like, pick-me-up book. Like, whatever you're going through, you're going to be like, well, after what everyone's been through, it's cake, you know? It won't
Yeah.
be as bad. But thank you for sharing so much about how you got here and delivered such an enjoyable read.
Thank you. I appreciate you more than I can say.
It was a pleasure. But before we go, what was your one favorite book of all time?
All right, so favorite book, I guess, would have to be not because it was my favorite to read, but because it was the first book I ever read, would be The Hobbit by Tolkien.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you again. Until next time, keep asking questions. And if you want an enjoyable, satisfying read, The Immortal will not let you down. It'll totally pick you up. We'll see you soon.